Welcome class back to chapter 4, working with lists. In this second video, we are going to cover the last three objectives, working with part of a list and tuples and styling your code. So working with part of a list, we talk about slicing a list. So taking a chunk out of the list and then working with it from there. So to make a slice, you specify the index of the first and last elements that you're trying to slice out of the list. So in this example, we have 5 names in our list of players, and we're going to start at the first index, which is 0, and we're going to go to 3. So 0, 1, and 2. So let's look at the results of this one. Okay, so we're slicing out 0, 1, and 2, and so the stopping point again is that number that's just one beyond that stopping point. If you omit the first index, Python automatically starts slicing at the beginning of the list. So we could modify this one and just have the 0 missing and build, and we would get the same results. Similar for the end of the list, so if we want to start at a specific spot and then go to the end of the list, we can do that as well. Okay, so starting at index of 2, 0, 1, and 2, and then we'll go to the end of the list. Negative indexes start from the end of the list, so we can start at a negative 3 in this example. So a negative 3 is going to give us the same results. Let's just say if we did a negative 4, just to see a little different results. So coming from the back, we're going in 4 values. Okay, so again, it doesn't start from 0 here, it just counts the number of values from the back. Looping through a slice, so we can take a chunk of our list and then go ahead and loop through it just like we learned in the first part of chapter 4. So slices are useful when we add players, final score to a list every time the player finishes playing. Then we could just track the player's top 3 scores in decreasing order and taking a slice that includes just the first 3 scores. Slice data in specific sizes to chunk, or maybe displayed shortened information on a web page or a web application. So here, let's go ahead and build this one. So using our for structure, so this is the bottom of page 62. So for player, again, that value that's going to be in our slice actually, and then our list name follows, and then we can add in addition here the actual slice. Okay, so we're starting at 0 and we're going for 3 items, so 0, 1, and 2, and then we'll go ahead and print out the player using title. Oh, looks like I have a syntax error here somewhere. Oh, my colon. There we go. So here are the first 3 players on my team. Again, we don't have the number starting here, so it starts from the beginning. So we've got Charles, Martina, and Michael. Again, that stopping point is that index number beyond the stopping point of where we want to stop. Copy in a list. So we have a colon inside of a square bracket that copies our entire list. So we'll go over this example and how we copy, and then we'll talk about this bottom part where it says this doesn't work. So here is the example that's on page 63. Pizza, whatever this is, and then carrot cake. So we are going to make a copy of the list. Okay, so my foods, and then this is the copy syntax, and we're going to store that in friend foods. Okay, so just making a copy of it, like a control C, control V type of situation. Copy and paste. And then we're just printing out those two lists. So my foods and then friend foods. Okay, so you see that the lists contain the exact same values. But then what we do is we will go ahead and further this by appending. Let me drag this down here a little bit. And add in, so my foods, we add in a fourth value. And then we add in a fourth value for friend foods as well. Okay, and we want to do this here before we actually print them out. So I'm going to go ahead and move those print statements up, or those append statements up here, and then have my print statements after. So now we see that we have a copied list, but my foods, my favorite foods, has this value, cannoli, and then my friend's favorite foods has the extra value of ice cream, and that's what we appended. Okay, so it makes a copy, and it's two individual lists versus what we're going to see next. Okay, so if I do this, okay, and I don't have that copy syntax on there, let's go ahead and see what happens. Okay, so now we see that we've essentially taken what's in my foods, put it into friend foods, okay, but when we append, it still has a reference to that list that we assigned from. Okay, so it's very important that you use that syntax of copy, otherwise you're going to get the results that you see there. Okay, because when we use the syntax that you see in number 2 here, we're saying to Python, associate friend foods with the list that already exists called my foods. Okay, and that's why you see both of these get the append. Okay, so when you want to copy and then make them individual, make sure you use this syntax so that you get the results that you intended. Okay, a logic error type of situation there. Tuples. One of the last things we'll talk about is tuple. A tuple is like constant, so it's something that doesn't change. It's a list of items that do not change, and Python refers them to as immutable. An immutable list is called a tuple. Now notice the syntax that's highlighted in red. That is different from how we create lists. When we create lists, we use square brackets. So if I jump back here, my list is noted with the syntax of square brackets, but when I am creating a tuple, I'm using a set of parentheses. Okay, I still refer to the indexes in the same exact way using the square brackets, but when I create the tuple, I use parentheses. Okay, so here we are, tuple, and then I'll give you the output. So this is index of 0, and then this is index of 1. Now when I go about trying to reassign values to a tuple, I have to completely do the statement all over again. So the second line you see here, dimensions 400, 100, that would be updating those values. I cannot do this where I put the index number and then do 250. This is a list type of syntax. This is not a tuple a way of syntax. So if I try to do dimensions 0 equals 400 and then print out dimension 0, for example, I get this error. Tuple object does not support item assignment. Okay, so you can never use this syntax when it comes to tuples. What you need to do is basically repeat your first creation and then assign the values that you want new. Okay, and I can't remember what they were on the slide, but that's how you go about reassigning. Okay, so now they're 400 and 100. So that's writing over a tuple. Okay, I just want to grab the lab that we're doing here. Page 68, 4-13 buffet. A buffet-style restaurant offers only 5 basic foods. Think of 5 simple foods and store them in a tuple. Okay, so we're going to be using this tuple example here. So you're going to take your 5 favorite foods and put them in here in the parentheses. You know, my favorite foods are chips. You know, probably not what you get at a restaurant, right? Fries. You know, you can continue with the list. Cookies, all healthy stuff, right? I actually don't eat stuff like that, but apples, pizza. Okay, so favorite foods. Okay, so 5 basic foods or 5 favorite foods. Use a for loop to print each food in the restaurant offers. Try to modify one of the items and make sure that Python rejects the change. The restaurant changes its menu, replacing 2 of the items with different foods. Add a line that rewrites the tuple and then use a for loop to print each of the items on the revised menu. Okay, so you can do bullet number 2, but then eventually correct the syntax so that it go ahead and writes it out. So I'm going to see the initial 5 values, and then you're going to reassign values to the tuple and then print them out again. So 2 print statements, original value of the tuple, and then the modified value of the tuple secondly for that one. Then lastly, styling your code. Write code that is easy to read. Okay, so indentation is very important. Blank lines are very important. And as you continue to practice, and even when we get into Alien Invasion, practice how they go about doing that, it's going to be examples that you can learn from. So indentation, it's 4 spaces per indentation level. So if I were to indent this line here, which I wouldn't do unless I had a 4 before it, but if I count the spaces here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, and maybe it's actually 5 in this one. You can set up your indentation. I don't know, I haven't done it here in Sublime before, but in other editors I have. But just stick to what the editor has, but that's a recommendation based on what they call PEP, okay? Python Enhancement Proposal, and it's version 8 currently, and that's the recommendation. Now the line length, each line should be less than 80 characters, so we don't want to be going horizontally to the right forever. And then again, use your blank lines to create balance. And as we go through and start creating functions and stuff like that, we're going to learn how many blank lines we should have, importing classes and stuff like that, so we can really see how things are done that way. So if you have any questions on Chapter 4, either through the first video or the second video on any of the labs, please let me know. There will be one more video for not really Chapter 4, but it's assigned with Chapter 4, and that will be the start of Alien Invasion. So again, questions, let me know. Thank you.